As the high school football season rolls on, we've got you covered. This is Next Round Preps on the Double Down Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, and welcome in to Next Round Preps. Jerry Young, John Lunsford here with you, and we are now at the break in the season when it comes to region play. Region play is what counts for the playoffs, and some big matchups we'll talk about later in the show coming up this week between different teams and different classifications in different regions. A lot of teams off coming up this week as well. That means last week was a very important week for a lot of teams when it comes to kind of setting the stage for where they are within region play before we head to this break. And Jerry, we'll obviously talk about the Thompson game we saw last week, and I think the game of the week coming up this week with Thompson as well as they take on the defending 6A state champion. But real quick before we get into some of the bigger scores and some of the bigger games that we saw last week, I do want to throw out a couple of games from down south that we had mentioned last week. UMS Wright, Viger, two teams that are always contending for state titles. UMS Wright got the win 10-7 over Viger in that one. They're at 5-0 heading into the break and looking really, really strong. Shocker, UMS Wright is looking really, really strong. Orange Beach, a team we've kept our eyes on with Jamie DuBose heading down to Orange Beach, obviously did really good at Central Phoenix City, a coach that's so well known in this state, but falling to T.R. Miller. T.R. Miller getting that win 38-13. How about that?
I'm telling you, T.R. Miller, of course, I think they're the winningest program in the state of Alabama, and they showed it right there. I didn't expect them to beat Orange Beach that bad. I thought it'd be more of a field goal kind of game, but 38-13, T.R. Miller Tigers. They did a great job, and they also had to travel, I believe, to Orange Beach to play that game.
Yep, Orange Beach, the home team in that one, falling. And then Andalusia, another team in the southern half of the state, taking on Montgomery Academy, who's coming off a Super 7 appearance last year. They dominated Montgomery Academy 49-7, and now Montgomery Catholic is the team they'll probably end up facing for the region title, but Andalusia always strong down there in the south as well. All right, moving on to some of the higher classification games. A game on Saturday. I didn't realize this was on Saturday. I started doing my notes Saturday, realizing the game hadn't happened yet. Gardendale, they beat Parker 27-14. Game between two probably playoff teams there from that region, but Gardendale getting a big win right there. Chad Eads doing a lot of good work there. Elsewhere in 6A, Helena beating Pelham 31-24 in overtime. Helena getting back in the win column. They fell to Homewood early. Pelham beats Briarwood, and then the next week they turn around and lose to rival Helena.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but that's probably the quietest rivalry in the state. I mean, everybody knows that Helena broke off from Pelham, and there for 2 or 3 years, Pelham was treating them kind of rough, but all of a sudden, here's Helena now doing great. And if you've never been to a game in Helena, it sits up on top of a nice little mountain, and especially if you can climb the stands and get up to the level near the press box. One of the prettiest views in Alabama from that stadium.
Yeah, I went. I think the first game I ever went to over there was a Helena-Chelsea game, and I was sitting on the visitor side because I knew somebody playing for Chelsea, so I was sitting over there with their parents. And, yeah, watching that sunset, especially this time of year when the game kicks off, it's still kind of sort of daylight. But, when you first start the season, it's daylight almost the entire first half because, it doesn't get dark till 8:30. And then we're at the point right now in the middle of the season, you can just watch that sunset, over the horizon. A really, really cool view there at Helena. But the Huskies get the win at 31-24, and you mentioned it's kind of a newish rivalry. It's funny to me, I always bring this up, that teams that split off from other schools, so Helena, even though they're two separate cities, splitting off from Pelham because everybody used to go to Pelham, they're a light blue team. And James Clemens split off from Bob Jones. They're a light blue team. Spain Park split off from Hoover. They're a light blue team. It's just kind of funny how the colors are always light blue whenever a team splits off.
It takes somebody like you to realize that, especially
it's
today,
just weird.
because if you're watching in on YouTube or whatever, we both happen to be wearing light blue. Is that what
I got my Atlanta colors on right now? Yeah. But yeah, still big win for Atlanta. But I'll say this about Pelham though: they're still ahead of Briarwood. They're both tied at 1-1 in that region. I believe it's a 17 region there with Homewood, Ben Russell, Calera, other teams there. But Pelham still can control their own destiny because they got that win over Briarwood. Briarwood has to do work in order to still make it into the playoffs, and I never thought we'd be saying that about Briarwood.
I didn't either, especially with their quarterback, considered by many to be the best quarterback in the state. So we'll see how Briarwood does. But you're talking about 6-8. Let's look at a game. Pinson Valley went to Oxford. They beat them 44-20. Coming off of that really hard loss to Clay Chalkville, shows me Pinson Valley's for real.
Yeah, I mean, the Clay game almost more than anything. I mean, Oxford really strong a couple years ago. We saw them last year, that first game against Thompson, just not quite the same. But now they're back in that same region with Pinson and Clay. I automatically had Oxford as the third team there. Pinson was the question mark. They could be up as high as 2. They could be as low as potentially not even making the playoffs, depending on how things went. But you're right, after that close game against Clay, not letting it be a disheartening loss, it's a rivalry game. We knew it's usually a close game anyway. But, yeah, able to get that win. I do think Pinson is for real, and my alma mater has Pinson this week. We'll talk about that in a second.
Right.
But very interested to see how Pinson's schedule, now that they have those 2 opponents behind them. They have Clay behind them in a close loss. They beat Oxford. What it's like the rest of the season there for Pinson Valley. Speaking of Homewood, who Pinson Valley plays next week, they got the big win over Ben Russell, 31-24 on homecoming. I would think we kept joking because Chelsea had Thompson for their homecoming, the game we were at. But I kind of thought Homewood would be smarter than schedule Benjamin Russell for homecoming, because Ben Russell's a team that's up and down, but Homewood has a little bit of a history with Ben Russell, playing him 2 straight Super 7s in a row. My last couple years of school, we were in their region, having to travel down south to Ben Russell and Valley and Chilton County teams further south from where Homewood is. And so I had no doubt this was going to be a good game. Ben Russell came in with a unbeaten record. They were 3-0 coming in. And Homewood getting the big win to move to 3-0 in region play. And they're already a game ahead of some teams, because Ben Russell's only played 2. Briarwood's only played 2. They were off last week. And, being ahead of Helena, Pelham's only played 2 as well. Being ahead of Helena, because they already got that head-to-head win, puts them in an outstanding position where really Briarwood, Pelham, I mean, that's pretty much all they have to beat. Chilton County's kind of fallen off. They're 0-3 in region play.
That's a shocker right there. I'm glad you said that. Chilton County, I thought at one time, was really going to give a lot of people some problems, but here lately they've fallen off.
I think a lot of that has to do with Briarwood more than anything, because they played that game so close against Briarwood. They had to score at the end to beat them. But Briarwood, there's a lot of question marks when it comes to Briarwood. So in that region right now, Homewood, Ben Russell still kind of sort of at the top. Helena trying to fight their way up to the top as well. Pelham currently ahead of Briarwood. Briarwood, the 5th team in that region. Never thought we would have been there when it comes to that region.
Hey, I want to talk about Jake Gaines out at Moody and what a job he's done out there. They're 5-0. They beat Lincoln 32-6.
Yeah.
Look out, Moody. I'm telling y'all, Moody is just all of a sudden appeared. And I know head coaching has a lot to do with it, but they got some good players. I'm circling Moody every single week the rest of the year. I want to see what these next 2 or 3 games for Moody going to be huge in playoffs.
There's one game I have circled in particular, and that's when they're taking on the Green Wave of Leeds, who, we know what Jerry Hood can do, and that program is always competing for state championships. But Moody, now it was Leeds and maybe Lincoln thrown in there, maybe, this team, that team. Moody, I do agree. They're for real. And, of course, Jay Gaines coming from Thompson. We were able to see what he could do firsthand at Thompson. I'm super impressed with him, that new turf field as well. Everything's going well in there in Moody. Any other games before we head on to 7A?
Just a couple of 5A games just to make note. Demopolis beat Clark County, and Jasper beat Winona, and Gulf Shores still on a winning track over LaFleur 45-12. So that's some scores in 5A, some teams we need to watch going into the second half of the year.
Definitely. All right, moving on to Class 7A in Region 1. I meant to mention this one also. I'm used to this being a 7A school. Theodore, they're actually 6A now, beat Spanish Fort last week. Forgot to mention that. Theodore moving down from 7A Region 1 for the first time. And I think they're the favorite in that region. Saraland has something to say about that. They're both unbeaten right now, but they beat Spanish Fort 29-21 to put Spanish Fort with a losing record halfway through the season, if you can believe it. But a tough schedule so far. Their only region losses are close to Saraland and Theodore, but Theodore, big win right there. All right, moving on to Region 2 in 7A, the biggest upset, I think, of the entire when I read the score off at halftime, it's like, wow, that's close. At the end of our game, it was going into overtime. Incredible win for Prattville, getting the win over Opelika 24-21 in overtime.
All right, John. So last week you'd already written them off, okay? You realize now if they come back, they got to win against either Central Phoenix City or Auburn, and then they got to win the ones they're supposed to, okay? They're still in it. Now, that's a big if. They got to win a game of one of those 2 teams, Auburn and Central, 2 of the strongest teams in the state. But you're right. I mean, I thought it was a misprint. I really did, especially after talking to the Prattville guys last week. They called me Saturday morning and, kind of like, told you we were good. And I'm like, well, we'll see what happens going on. But, they're shocked. They shocked me. I'll be honest with you. They shocked me.
And they're sitting at 1-2 in region play, but they still have to worry about Dothan because Opelika's already gotten the win over Central, so you're still kind of counting Auburn and Central as maybe the top two teams. Opelika with that win over Central is right there, but they lost to Dothan, and Dothan got a big win, 57-43 over Smith Station. Both of those teams beat Prattville before they went into this game against Opelika, so they still have a lot of work. Like you said, they have to get a win over Central or Auburn, and that is not an easy task there. It is a 9-team region, so they're going to have that extra region game, but you got to get a win over one of those.
Yeah, but you just said it. They got to get past Dothan first. They still haven't shown me. They haven't proved anything other than they won one game they weren't supposed to. So Dothan ran up 57 points last week, John. They got a good offense.
Yeah, I think Dothan right now, if I had to pick a team, it's between Dothan and maybe Enterprise for that final spot, but Prattville obviously has put their name right in there. Also one score in Region 1, I did want to mention Baker and Daphne. Daphne got the win 25-14. Those were two teams at the top fighting with Fairhope for the top spot, but looks like Daphne and Fairhope are going to be the top two teams there maybe in that region. Foley also competing for a playoff spot down there as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Enterprise. They beat Rehoboth, like I said, 50-6. But here's the thing. They're off this week, and they've got an off week before they play, guess who? Prattville. And that's one of the games Prattville's got to win. So we'll keep an eye on that.
That was one I would have just said, Enterprise or Prattville. They still have Enterprise left. They had Opelika left. They got past one of those, so you're right. They do have to win that one and still beat Auburn or Central to try to make their way into the playoff with the two losses that they already have. In Region 4, Huntsville and Bob Jones. Bob Jones beat James Clemens. They had kind of established themselves with Austin as the top teams in the region. Well, Bob Jones, they fall to Huntsville 28-24. So that puts Austin in first, and then Spartman, Bob Jones, Florence, Huntsville all tied at 2-1. Heading into the break. So everybody's beating everybody, but a lot of them still obviously have to play each other. But right now it seems like Austin's in first, and kind of the way things have played out, Spartman fighting for a home game right there. We saw Spartman last year. They were a team that could kind of just sneak into the playoffs in that 4 spot, but looking strong along with Bob Jones. Florence is a team that's always competing as well. And Huntsville now, with the big win over Bob Jones, has put themselves in good position to potentially make their way into a home game in that first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. But Region 1 has been weak in the past. I still think overall in the state that's a weak region. Yeah,
Region 2, Region 3 is really where it's at. We mentioned Opelika falling, so that's a big upset there for Prattville. But in Region 3, I don't know if I would consider any of these upsets the way it played out, because the only one you would consider maybe is Oak Mountain and Tuscaloosa County, but Oak Mountain falling to Chelsea after County had just beaten Chelsea by a point. Really close game there between County and Chelsea, but Tuscaloosa County, last play of the game, score a touchdown to win 34-31. Big win for Adam Weingarten.
Yeah, and I we said it started last year. We started talking about Adam Weingarten is a winner. He's not just going to sit there and say, well, Tuscaloosa County be happy with 5-5 season. No, they're sitting there right now, John, at 4-1. Their only losses to Hewitt-Trussville. They got beat pretty good by Hewitt, 35-7. They're open this week, and then they play Spain Park. You got to figure they're favored in that game, and then after Spain Park, they got to play Hoover. They're going into that game after they beat Spain Park. I'm just going to say it, 5-1 record. They're going to have a better record probably than Hoover does.
Yeah, Hoover already with a loss and 4-1. We'll talk about them in a second. But, it's very possible with who Hoover has this week. It sounded like an hour there.
Whoever has Hoover.
Hoover. Spain Park, you mentioned the next game for them. They fall to Vestavia 36-7. So Vestavia starting off, Spain Park and Vestavia both starting off with Hoover and Thompson to start things off. Not an easy start for them. Both of them played Hoover very close, but Vestavia clearly the better team here, 36-7. That puts them at 1-2, and I think potentially, it's kind of between Vestavia and Tuscaloosa County right now, but I'm still leaning Vestavia as being that 4th team in 7A Region 3. Would be huge for Robert Evans if he can get them in the playoffs in the first year. Thompson, they beat Chelsea 48-3. Chelsea had a 7-minute 40-second drive to start the game off to go up 3-0, and when they kicked that field goal, it was like, the game's over. I got text from people from Chelsea, stop the game. We've won. It's 3-0. 48 unanswered points for Thompson. It was easy work from that point. Thompson got the win to move to 3-0.
Thompson, if as everybody knows, you and I do the Thompson games, and they needed that kind of a win. They've been playing from behind the chains a lot this year. They've been playing behind when in downs because of penalties. That game, everything kind of came together, but the highlight of that game to me was Trent Seaborn. the 8th grader coming in at quarterback, lighting up the scoreboard the second half. Absolutely amazing talent.
Yeah, his arm is phenomenal. He can place the ball wherever he wants to. And, when you see Thompson has an 8th grader playing quarterback, and, I don't know about you, but I think there's a good chance you're going to see a lot of him playing, and potentially starting there at quarterback. I mean, he's 8th grade. He still has a long way to go and still a long way to build rapport with all those receivers that are coming up with him as well. Anyway, they get the win 48-3, no shock there. And then Hoover Hewitt Trussville, 17-7. Hoover gets the win there. I thought Hewitt could win that game, but Hoover ended up getting the better of him by 10.
I agree. I thought, Hoover did a good job. Hoover's still Hoover. By the way, going back to Trent Seaborn just for a second, he's growing up an Alabama fan. You'll like to know that.
So all you Alabama fans, if you want a guy that can sit there in the pocket and just deliver a dime every single time,
right,
that's Trent Seaborn. But really looking forward to seeing what he can look like against potentially, Hoover. Hewitt Trussville still on the schedule when it comes to region play. And, of course, coming up this week against Clay Chaltville, the defending 6 and 7A state champions playing this week. We'll break down that, plus all the other big games, a lot of really good ones, but also a lot of teams off as well right here on Next Round Preps.
At Albritton and Artavino Family Dentistry, we know how valuable your time is. So if it's a crown you need, let us take care of it with our same-day crown service. We have the latest technology allowing us to build your custom crown right here in our office while you wait. Albritton and Artavino Family Dentistry is here to serve you.
Albritton and Artavino are easy to find. Exit 238, that's the Alabaster exit, next door to American Family Care, or call them at 205-664-7610.
Alabaster Living has been a major community supporter for years in the Alabaster area and is excited to introduce their new streaming TV channel. Alabaster Living Television can be found on Roku and Fire Stick and has new video content featuring Thompson High School, the city of Alabaster, local churches, businesses, and citizens added weekly. Just load ALTV to your streaming device and start watching to see all that Alabaster has to offer. You can also follow Alabaster Living on Facebook and YouTube to stay on top of everything going on in the community. Add ALTV to your Roku or Fire Stick device today.
Hi, I'm Jerry Young. I want to tell you about Holloway Home Loans here in Central Alabama. Thomas Holloway is a former Oak Mountain Eagle who moved on to play his college ball and earn his degree from West Point. Thomas is still an Army reservist and an expert in residential home mortgages, offering personalized service at an amazing price because he works for you and not the financial institutions. Call Thomas today at 205-413-2858, or you can email him, thomas@hollowayhomeloans.com. That's Holloway Home Loans and Edge Home Financing, MLS 1985757.
Cartridge World of Vestavia is well known for the lowest prices on toner cartridges, but are you aware of their free printer program? You heard right. There's no catch. Simply agree to buy your ongoing printer cartridges from Cartridge World of Vestavia, and we'll provide you with a printer at no cost. A Cartridge World expert will personally consult with you to find out your business's exact needs so you can have a stronger bottom line. Visit Cartridge World of Vestavia Hills on the web or call 205-822-6767. That's Cartridge World of Vestavia. Welcome back in here, Next Round Preps. We are now at the midseason break of the season, week 5 officially, the 6th overall week of the season. I still don't know why we call it week 0 at the beginning because pretty much everybody played. And because of that, half the teams are off this week. So there's a lot of teams we won't mention that we mentioned a lot of times because they're not playing this week. And, when it comes to 7A Region 3, Tuscaloosa County, Vestavia, Spain Park, 3 teams we just talked about, all off this week. Some teams are playing phenomenal matchups. Some are just filling a spot on the schedule. But regardless, about half and half this week when it comes to teams playing. A lot of teams will take that week 10 spot off. You basically have 3 spots you can take a bye. You can take it at the beginning of the season, but really nobody does that anymore. You can do week 10 before the playoffs if you know your playoff team, Thompson, Hoover, Hewitt, all those teams do that. You can take week 5 off because it's a non-region week if you want that mid-season break for your team. Or if you're in an odd region, you usually have a week off somewhere randomly in the middle of the schedule like Briarwood did last week. In a 7-team region there, while Homewood, Helena, Pelham, Ben Russell, they all played region games. Briarwood took the week off. So a lot of teams choosing this week, but still some phenomenal matchups, especially in the upper classifications. A lot of really, really solid matchups. It's hard to I usually go by classification and start from the bottom, work my way up, but everybody's playing everybody.
I can tell you the bottom matchup of the week. That's going to be Hewitt Trussville playing Huffman. That's more or less like a practice game for Hewitt.
Huffman was a 7A Region 3 team. Didn't work well for them there. They dropped down to 6A. Hasn't really worked out well for them there either. This is the spot where Clay Chaltville fans start screaming and saying, we want to play Hewitt-Trussville. Playing a better opponent in Thompson this week, but I know they wanted the Pauls and Claws rivalry to not go away. However, it did, and that's a whole different debate we can get into another day. Yeah. So a lot of these are going to be interclass, 6A versus 7A, 5A versus 6A, whatever. So I'm just going to start from the bottom of my list and work my way up. Whenever you want to throw a game in there,
okay,
go for it. A game between two teams who used to be 5A, but one's 6A now, but very intriguing here in the Birmingham area, including a city school. Parker hosts Pleasant Grove in this one. Parker's been really, really good this season. They fell to Gardendale this past Saturday, and it's a team I'm still really not sure about because they've had some good wins, they've had some bad losses, but Pleasant Grove, they're only lost to Ramsey, who Parker has beaten, so I'm kind of curious to see what Pleasant Grove looks like and if they're a team that can potentially make a run in the playoffs like they typically do. St. Paul's taking on Faith Academy, another team that used to be 5A that's moved up to 6A with St. Paul's. They're traveling to Faith Academy. In that one should be a pretty good game between the two private schools down in Mobile. Hartselle at Oxford, a good game between a Region 7 and Region 8 team in 6A. Hartselle undefeated so far. We saw Oxford lose to Pinson Valley. You mentioned that last week. And then down south, you have Saraland at Foley. Foley, we've talked about, football's better when Foley's good and in the playoff race. I think they're still in the playoff race for 7A Region 1. Saraland trying to be the top dog in 6A Region 1. They still have Theodore, former 7A Region 1 team to go, but Saraland at Foley. Let's see, Baker at Dothan. Good matchup there between a 7A Region 1, Region 2 team. We talked about Dothan trying to make a run to the playoffs. Dothan, a team at 4-1, 3-1. I wouldn't have expected at this point, but that win over Prattville has really put them in good position. Put up a ton of points last week against Smith Station. Baker trying to work their way into the playoff as well.
How about Andalusia at Bibb County?
Yeah.
It's going to be a great ball game.
Bibb County worked their way into being a good playoff team a few years ago, and Andalusia, I mentioned that they beat Montgomery Academy, a team who's had a really, really good season last year, beating 49-7. So Andalusia looking to carry that momentum against Bibb County as well. What other games are you looking for?
Moody, just because they're on a winning streak, 5-0, they'll go to Shelby County, who's 3-1. That could be a tighter ball game, but just wanting to see how Moody does. Of course, they're both 5A schools, so they're not playing out of classification. American Christian 4-1. They'll be at home against Northridge. They'll travel to Northridge, a 6A team, so a 4A playing a 6A.
Not that far to go for either one.
Right, but American Christian, 4-1, they're always good. Got a great facility. We went down there and called a game 2 or 3 years ago, so anxious to see how that works out.
I actually played the first game ever on Northridge's field. Homewood played down there the first year they had their own field, and after that school started with them and Paul Bryant. And Northridge has worked their way into the playoff race in Region 4 in 6A. You have McAdory, who's always there, Hillcrest, who's always there, Hueytown, who's always there, but Northridge has definitely solidified themselves as a top 4 team in that region, so it should be a good one there. Like you said, ACA is always a team that competes.
How about Benjamin Russell again this week? They'll travel to Smith Station. Now, the only reason I mention that, Smith Station is 1-4, but they've had some quality losses, if there is such a thing. They're a 7A team. Benjamin Russell, 6A team. They just lost to Homewood this week. Now they're going to play up in classification. We'll see how Benjamin Russell does in 7A.
And a good test for Smith Station, that one and their one win is Prattville, who just beat Opelika. So,
yeah.
They gave up a lot of points last week. It was 57-43. As they lost to Dothan, but still put up a lot of points themselves. So I am very interested to see kind of how Smith Station plays the rest of the season, along with Dothan, who we mentioned, who's playing Baker. My alma mater, Homewood, they host Pinson Valley this week. Pinson sitting at 2-2, but those two losses are, pretty good ones there. In Homewood, they're sitting at 4-1. They beat Ben Russell to move to 3-0 in region play. To take my red, white, and blue glasses off, I still probably like Pinson Valley in this one, the way that they've played. But, games at Waldrop Stadium, who knows?
Yeah, well, I agree with you, John. I'm kind of, believe it or not, after last week, I'm leaning a little bit toward Homewood. I tell you why. Pinson Valley is, they got beat up by Clay Chaltville. They played Oxford. They won pretty good, but Oxford's not as good as they have been. I think they may not be quite ready for Homewood. Homewood's going to hit you in the mouth. And we'll see of course, Clay Chaltville hit him in the mouth now. I'm looking at that, maybe there. But I don't know why. Just one of those feelings. I just kind of got a feeling Homewood might just surprise somebody here.
I sure hope so, for my alma mater's sake. But good one there between Pinson and Homewood. They've met in the playoffs a couple times. Hasn't gone well for Homewood when they met in the playoffs, especially there when Bo Nix was at Pinson Valley. Ramsey, a team who has gone to Auburn one time and won a state championship when they beat Opelika. That was a while ago. That was 6 years ago.
6 years, yeah.
Yeah. But they won a state championship down in Auburn. Now they're traveling to Auburn to just play Auburn High School. But Auburn High School, a team who's used to playing in the Super 7 as well. Don't know about this one for Ramsey. They are 4-1 in the season. Auburn's 5-0, so record-wise pretty good. But going to be a tall task for Ramsey to head down to Auburn.
Rams are going to have to grow bigger horns to beat that team.
Yeah, I'll say this about Ramsey, and it started with Reuben Foster when he was there, and it's carried over. And did I say Reuben Foster? Reuben Foster's the linebacker for Alabama.
Reuben Nelson.
Reuben Nelson. It started with him, and it's carried over. I remember seeing Chase Bryce, who I believe is with App State, who threw that Hail Mary this past weekend, went to Clemson and played there. He's kind of gone around schools. He was at Grayson, and we called the 7-on-7 out at Hoover one year that Grayson was there. And he looked phenomenal. And I remember thinking, man, this kid's really good. I'd love to see him against in-state competition. And then I look at the schedule. They're playing Hoover and Ramsey. Both of them went over. Both of them lost. That was a really good Grayson team. They won the state title in 7A in Georgia that year. But, it's really cool to see teams like Ramsey step out. They're not the kind of team that normally would have stepped out of state to play or go down south and, make a couple-hour drive down south to play Auburn. I love the teams at Ramsey that are really good right now are stepping out of their comfort zone and going to play these teams.
Well, I think Auburn High School might be the best team in Auburn, Alabama this year. I'm not kidding you. After yesterday, I don't mean we're not talk college, but I'm telling you, Auburn's good. Auburn High School's good.
Auburn High School's good. Auburn University, not so much.
Not so good.
After that Penn State game. Let's see. Prattville, after that big win, they are going to take on rival Stanhope Elmore. Stanhope has not had the best season so far, sitting at 1-3 on the season. However, before this past week, I had said the same thing about Prattville, and I would have almost guaranteed you they come in with a 1-3 record too, but they're 2-2 after getting that Opelika win, but they're going to Stanhope Elmore, going over to Millbrook to play them. Should be a good rivalry game there. Theodore and Opelika. I think this is one. I bolded 4 games that I can't wait to watch when it comes to this is just the best playing the best. And Theodore Opelika, even though Opelika lost to Prattville, this is a phenomenal game here. Theodore. This would have been a 7A Region 1 and 2 matchup before, but Theodore dropped down. But I really like this one. Theodore heading to Opelika to play in that one. And then one more. Won't break this down because I really don't know much about the other team other than they're considered unfair by a lot of people in the country, and that is IMG Academy going to Central Phoenix City to take on Patrick Nix's squad.
All right, John, so tell me, I never understand. I mean, I get IMG as, they recruit you, go there, all the things that you hear. There's one coach for every 3 players. You have your own personal trainer. I mean, you basically go to school, the way I understand it, your 4 basic classes in the morning, the rest of the day is spent on becoming a better football player, okay? And their facility is off the charts. But what do you have to gain if you're Central Phoenix City to go down there and play that team other than coming back with injuries? I mean, I know you say, well, it'll make us a better football team. I'm not so sure. You're playing basically a team that can beat most small colleges and – you come out of there, you're facing, big guys on the offensive, defensive line. There's some, I don't see any good out of it.
Yeah, so looking at IMG's schedule so far, they're 2-1 in the season. Their loss coming to Miami Central, who's always a powerhouse. They played Hoover a few years back. They came to Hoover and beat them pretty good. I like seeing this from a Alabama versus the world standpoint because we want Alabama football to represent the best of the best. With Thompson this year, going over to Georgia, watching them play Buford, who's a top 10 team in the country, watching them play Lipscomb Academy, who's a top 25 team in the country. It's good from a state pride standpoint, and I guess IMG Academy is the same thing. If you can beat the team that's looked at as the best of the best, then you're considered the best of the best. And, it probably gets you in front of some more eyeballs when it comes to recruiting. IMG a lot of times will be on ESPN. I don't know if this game's going to be on ESPN or not, but, Hoover's played them a few times. Auburn played them last year. Auburn almost beat them last year. So I guess Central's trying to do the same thing. And Patrick Nix trying to get his team out there on a national stage and, maybe help with some recruiting as well. But A lot of people consider it unfair. I want to say it's maybe the state of Texas has said they won't let them play any teams that are within their association.
Right. Florida
won't let them into their association because they said it's unfair. Obviously, they can recruit there. I kind of equate IMG Academy to like the School of Fine Arts here. Like, if you're a really good piano player and you want to go study that and that's what you want your craft to be, you go to the Alabama School of Fine Arts here, you really study it, you really hit it hard through your high school years, get a scholarship to go to college somewhere and learn how to be a concert pianist. I kind of equate the same thing for football down there. Now, sports and music are two very different things. You can't injure yourself really playing the piano. I guess you can if you get way after it. But, with IMG Academy, the kind of hits you take in football, the kind of teams you're playing great competition every single week as opposed to having some off weeks against not quite as good teams. I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle on IMG Academy. I'm not totally against it, but I'm also not totally for, yes, they should just be in there with everybody else either.
Yeah, well, if I had a son that was that good, I could see sending him to IMG. I'm not against them. I get that they have to play some teams, but they don't play that I can tell out in California, which there's 2 or 3 good teams there. They, like I say, they're not let in Texas. I think there's a Michigan team that plays them every now and then. But, they're beating up on some guys. I get it. I'm all for teaching them how to do it. I'm just not for that kind of schedule.
Here's their schedule this year. Miami Central, so that's staying in state. DeSmet Jesuit in St. Louis, Missouri. They beat 50-6. They beat East High School out of Salt Lake City, Utah, 63-13 last week, or 2 weeks ago. They were off. Then Central this week. Jones High School in Orlando, St. Thomas More in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, American Collegiate Academy, sounds like IMG Academy in Clearwater, Middletown in Delaware, West Toronto Prep in Ontario. So they're going to Toronto to play a game, and then they're playing St. Francis Academy in Baltimore, who is one of those top powerhouse teams in the country. So most of those games, Central, Miami Central, and St. Francis Academy are really the only teams that are even remotely close to national presence as far as I know. So it's almost like, don't forget, this is the same team that played Bishop Gorman last year that wasn't even a real school. And
right.
They beat them 60-0 on ESPN, but that wasn't even a real school. It's like, right. I'd rather watch Hoover or Thompson or somebody play them than that. I mean, come on.
Well, as a Thompson broadcaster, I wish Thompson would play them down there so we get a free trip to Orlando. That'd be cool.
Yeah, because when I announced the schedule this year, I told my wife, right. I was like, hey, we're playing a couple out-of-state teams. She instantly said, IMG Academy, so we can go to Disney World afterwards on a weekend trip. And I was like, no, we're going to Georgia, sorry. And she's like, oh, man, I want to go to IMG Academy. Right. Who knows, maybe in the future they'll play them.
Maybe so.
All right, moving on past IMG Academy.
That's right. How about Chelsea and Pelham getting together this week?
Yeah, Chelsea, they, had a rough loss this past weekend, but after coming off a win the week before against Oak Mountain, Pelham, meanwhile, a tough loss to rival Helena, and Chelsea, a former region team there. They were in that region, those regions with like Homewood and such, and, I think Chelsea probably can pull this win out.
I do too.
The way they played against County, the way they played against Oak Mountain, you can't really count how they play against Thompson because Pelham probably would look the exact same. But two teams with not great records who are still trying to make maybe a bid for a playoff spot, later on this year. You mentioned Hewitt Trussell Huffman. That's, whatever. Before we get to other Region 3 games, I want to throw out real quick James Clemens, Muscle Shoals. James Clemens at 1-4 this season. I can't imagine James Clemens being at 1-4. I know they lost their coach to Hoover, but Muscle Shoals, they're so far unstoppable, 4-0 on the season. Also, Gardendale, team who's played really, really well, beat Parker this past weekend. On Saturday, they are taking on Austin. They're traveling up to Decatur to play Austin, who is currently in the lead in 7A Region 4, so it should be a good game between two unbeaten region teams there. Briarwood, they're taking on Oak Mountain. We mentioned, Oak Mountain, Chelsea losing to Tuscaloosa County last week on a last-second score. At the same time, Briarwood has had their struggles as well. Both of these teams desperately need – this isn't going to count outside of tiebreakers, but they desperately need a momentum win before region play starts.
I agree. And if you had to pick one 7A team, if you're Briarwood to play on Week 5, I think Oak Mountain is a great choice, either them or Chelsea, of course. But, they beat Spain Park on a last-second play, and now they got a chance to take another 7A team down, even though Clay Chop will really mop the floor with them, and then a really freakish loss last week to Pelham. But I still like Briarwood Christian in this game over Oak Mountain.
I'm not sure who I like. I mean, I obviously had the advantage of quarterback with Christopher Fazina there for Briarwood, but going to Herdmar Park to play, Oak Mountain, it's 2 miles, 3 miles down the road, so it's not like it's going down, to a far away road game. But Battle 119 could be interesting. Like I said, the winner of this one definitely needs the momentum heading into the back half of region play. 2 other games I had marked in big, bold letters because it's basically number 1 versus number 1, and in my opinion, number 2 versus number 2 when it comes to the North at least. And starting with the number 2s, that is Hoover at Mountain Brook. Hoover 4-1 in the season. That only lost the early season loss to Auburn down in Montgomery. Mountain Brook has absolutely manhandled everybody they've played so far this season. Haven't really played anybody, but outside of maybe Vestavia is the best game they've played. But 5-0 for Mountain Brook. I plugged this one into my little odds maker, and it came up Hoover minus 1.5. That's it. Really? Only a 1.5. So this one definitely a close game between Hoover and Mountain Brook.
Okay, you never pick against Hoover, right? But I got to tell you, I love Mountain Brook in this game. I just think that they're so physical. I think they're so well coached. Not that Wade Waltrip is not a great coach at Hoover by any means, but I just think that Mountain Brook, the Spartans, are going to roll.
This is a game that I think we're going to read the halftime score off during our game and be like, oh, Mountain Brook's up 14-10 on Hoover. And then I'm going to read the final score off, and it's going to be like 24-14. Hoover pulled it out. They got a late interception or something like that, right. A defensive touchdown, a punt return for a touchdown, a punt block, something like that they ended up winning the game. And I'm ultimately going to probably go with Hoover, but you're right. This is a game where any blowout would surprise me, but no matter what the result is, if it's under 30 points, I could see this game going either way. It should be a really good game between Hoover and Mountain Brook, and of course a former 7A Region 3 matchup there with Mountain Brook, who's still down in 6A. But the best of 6A last year and still the best of 6A as of right now, as far as I'm concerned, taking on the best of 7A last year, who, depending on who you ask, the best of 7A, a lot of people are going to lean in the direction of Auburn because they're still unbeaten, whereas Hoover and Thompson lost, including Hoover losing to Auburn. But Thompson's only losses to out-of-state top 25 teams in Tennessee and Georgia. But Clay Chalkville at Thompson. This is a game I had circled from the beginning. Jerry, I don't know about your opinion on this, but back when I was playing, when I was a wee tyke back in the early 2000s, Homewood and Hoover every single year almost played the exact same. Homewood win a championship, Hoover win a championship. Homewood lose in the Super 6, Hoover lose in the Super 6. Then we win a championship, they win a championship. We win a championship, they won a championship. And there were so many years, and they ended up writing articles about this. I don't remember who it was. Somebody did a great "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" parody where they did a whole, the whole poem of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," but it was about Hoover and Homewood playing in like a special state championship after the Super 6 was over, where Hoover kicked a last-second field goal in the most epic game ever to win. And I so bad, when I was at Homewood, wanted to play a team like Hoover because the 6A team always just got credit over the 5A team. And I know we come at this from the Thompson angle, but I know people from Clay Chalkville are probably thinking the same thing, thinking, well, yeah, Thompson won, but what about us? What about Clay Chalkville? And I always wanted there to be that game. The AHSAA tried to do it with their Champions Classic, but never actually got like the 5A and 6A or then 6A and 7A champions to play each other. But now, Thompson and Clay Chalkville playing each other, they said, we'll do it ourselves. And I don't know if there's a return game next year at Clay Chalkville or not. I would assume maybe there is. But Clay Chalkville and Thompson easily could be the champions again this year. I cannot wait for this game.
All right, I know with the feeling that you're talking about. My son played at Briarwood the years that they won 2 state championships. One of those years, we went up to North Alabama and played Deschler. Deschler's one loss that year was to Briarwood. Briarwood was 3A, Deschler was 4A. Yeah. Michael, I forgot Michael's last name in the backfield. Running back went on to Auburn, started with a D, Michael something. Anyway, it's always fun. So Briarwood then claimed, well, we're all, not only 3A, but we're 4A champs as well. So yeah. It is. It's something you want to look to. But let me tell you something. Here's how many points Clay Chalkville's put up this year. 48 against Briarwood, 42 against Hueytown, 58 against Pell City, only 14 against Pinson Valley, and then last week, 56 against Centerpoint. They have got a fantastic offense. Thompson's strong point right now is their defense. However, their best defensive player on the field last week got a really serious leg injury, so it's going to leave that defensive line hurt. Whether or not Peter Woods comes back and starts this week He's had a leg injury as well.
Yeah, he didn't even play last week.
Yeah, he didn't play. So Peter Woods can make a difference if he's healthy. So we'll just see how that goes. But I just think this is going to be a fantastic ball game. And you can watch it on the WarriorNationNetwork.org, but also just to give our friends over at My 68 a plug, they're going to be in town to broadcast it. So it'll be on My 68 on TV. But if you want to hear the real broadcast, you can go to WarriorNationNetwork.org.
Yeah, that was the only game I've watched of Clay Chalvo because obviously playing on the same night a lot of times. But they were on that My 68 broadcast against Pinson. And you said they only scored 14, but that game was a monsoon the entire time. Had that not been the case, I think Clay probably would have won by a little more, maybe put up 28, 35 points potentially, but it was a disaster of a game when it came to weather. This is a game that if it ends up being 42-35, not going to shock anybody just because Thompson's offense is clicking, especially with Sebring, throwing absolutely perfect passes. When Zach Sims is in the game, he can run the ball really well. A.J. Green's done a phenomenal job running the ball as well, but Clay can put those points up. And, with those injuries on the defensive line, against Pinson, when it was raining, they had to run the ball because you can't air it out. And they did a really good job running the ball, moving the ball on the ground. So that doesn't lead to quite as high a scoring. So I cannot wait for this game. I know we're on the homer side of things when it comes to Thompson, but from an outsider looking in, it doesn't get much better than this in the whole country, but especially in the state.
That could play into Thompson's hands, and I'm going to tell you why. If they air the ball out, you've got the best defensive backs in the state right now really playing on Thompson with Tony Mitchell, Anquan Fagans. You got a great linebacker core. So the weakness right now may be defense in the running game if you're Thompson. If Clay Chalvo decides to air it out, it may be a little bit of advantage to Thompson. We'll see how it goes as well. But, John, you're right. You and I both have been waiting on this ball game now for almost a year.
I got Thompson as a touchdown favorite according to the math, but we'll see what happens in this one. Cannot wait for that game. Like Jerry said, the Warrior Nation Network, WarriorNationNetwork.org. You can listen to it or watch it on the NFHS Network, the best value in all of sports as far as I'm concerned, all the great games you can watch. That one will be Friday. We will have all the recaps for you next week, including all these phenomenal games. And I've already started filling teams into that bracket, and we'll talk about who needs to win desperately when it comes to the first week of region play in the second half. We get back next week right here on Next Round Preps.